Um, so this is the NeoBooks call for Monday, February 3rd, 2025. So last week, Marc-Antoine went through a lot of his framing for the needs for NeoBooks, et cetera, which is really cool. Jax, you have done some homework and um, likewise put together a document. I have not had enough time in my travels to sit and digest it, but I'm actually really looking forward to not only digesting it, but trying to synthesize and triangulate or something between your perspectives and the things that I've been hoping to do with NeoBooks as well. Jax, you're muted. You also, I think you put a link to the document in the Mattermost channel for NeoBooks. If anybody wants to go find it, we can also put it in the chat here easily enough.
Please.
Yeah.
And Jax, if you want to screen share or talk us through it or anything like that, it'll probably be a minute or two before Klaus joins us and maybe Rick, but go right ahead. They can scroll from the start of the recording.
Okay. I've just popped the thanks, Jerry, and hello everyone. It's so nice to be here, and I love just getting a little taste of your meeting beforehand. They're so connected, and I have a little bit of FOMO because yeah, there's just not enough hours in the day, but that looks really exciting. Before I share, I'll just tell you a little bit about where I have come to this document, and then I'll just walk through it at a fairly high level, because I do appreciate that no one's had time to even know that it exists. And Eric, I don't think have we met before? Hello.
Yeah, I don't always get to this call, but I'm on other Jerry's calls. So nice to meet you.
Great, nice to meet you too. And so, Eric, I've been for you as well as the group, but you're probably the one who may not know this. I've been on I've been dropping into NeoBooks for about 6 months. And then just around Christmas time, I knew that my time here was going to run out because I've joined a master's program that's going to suck me into that universe for the year. So what I had offered to the group was that over that sort of 4 or 5 weeks, I would play the role of an observer and then bring the skills that I have to that and feed back to the group what I saw and what I observed, and from my own perspective, but to try and also think of it as broadly as possible. And what I've got to show for you today is those observations. I want to also just let you know that with that, it also includes your meeting from last week, and I've sought to build on Marc-Antoine's model as well, without trying to duplicate it or go beside it. I'm really trying to fold here so that we've got something that might be helpful. So that's the framing of this, and I had promised to show you and deliver it. Deliver a bit corporate there, but to walk you through it. And there's an opportunity that I can take your feedback over the week and go back and just reformat it a little bit, or take the salient pieces out and synthesize what you need, whatever would be helpful for you. So that's sort of the bigger picture of what I can do this week. It's a very it's a Google Notes doc, so it's not all pretty or anything, but I will share my screen now. And there's something like 8. So you can't see it just yet.
We don't see it yet.
No,
now we do.
Now we do. Boom. There we go.
Great. Got a lot better at doing that in this group. It's funny, isn't it? Regular actions of things. I wasn't a very tech person. I'd sort of gone stale on tech before I joined NeoBooks, even though I used to be very tech oriented. And it's something that I've had to, that I've really learned a lot in the last 6 months. I've broken this down into a series of of sections. The first part's really what I've just explained to you then, which is, so I've called it a month of neo-booking. Technically it's 5 weeks and it spans 2 months. And so I'm calling it a 5-week journey. The first bit there is on reflections and next steps, which I've just sort of really spoken to a bit anyway, so we don't need to really dive into that. I've got a current view, and I've also got sort of a what next and some questions. The current view is looking at sort of where we are now, where I sort of observe where we're sitting at in this period of time, and from all of the discussions. Gesundheit.
That's you.
I think that well, in my observations, I see that the NeoBooks project is taking shape. It's collaborative, evolving space for knowledge sharing and structuring. If we need to add more words around this or more meaning, it can be built in. But I see that what we've got here is a collaborative forum around the concept of knowledge sharing. The reason why I think we have it is because we've got an acceleration of technology, and we've got shifts within the trusted knowledge sharing approaches within the world. And for us, what we're trying to do is to create a resilient and adaptable system that we can share, engage with, create and build and manipulate knowledge from lots of different perspectives. For that to work for us, we're really aware that it has to be flexible. The conversation has moved further into looking at more of a polyphonic approach, especially we have a lot of conversations about the suitability of text or even language in terms of English language, how and coding, metacodes, meta tagging. So it's a little bit about who we are. And I'll go back to my notes here. Sorry. I think there's 2 questions that we are seeking to address within this group. The first is how we create a trusted space for knowledge. And through trusted, I'm thinking of observing things like whether the facts which can be contested, looking at whether there is some kind of knowledge that's stable, that can be trustworthy going through. And the other one is around how we keep that knowledge fluid, which is, Jerry, your comment often is around the book. The book sort of freezes that knowledge in time, and we're looking at how we can keep knowledge moving through time with input along the way. I think our 2 outcomes, our one outcome, our main outcome is to provide a globally accessible, resilient knowledge environment, and that allows that format to evolve as it goes through. We have a lot of conversations around definition. I've put something here which is easy to contest there, but an idea that NeoBooks doesn't store the knowledge as rigid text, just sort of repeating that idea, but a small modular statement or knowledge elements that can be recombined, expanded, and revisited. And we have had some discussion about whether that's modular, whether it's fractal, whether and then we talk about it in a also sometimes as nuggets, although they might be part of the nuggets. So we're still a little bit fluid in the definition space. However, the idea is that they're sort of pieces which can be combined and recombined. So that's I think where our conversation is at from my perspective. I'll pause there for a moment in case, Marc-Antoine, did you want to add or say, ask a question?
Yeah, just one thing you speak about, it's not just text, music, art, movement, interactive formats. I think the question of structured data is really fundamental, at least to my vision. Now, I don't know if it's fundamental to the NeoBook vision, but if we're speaking about, things that could be part of it, for me, that's key. The question of trusted I think I agree with what you're trying to say. I try to avoid that word because there's contested knowledge. That's a fact. And something that someone will trust is something that someone will distrust, and vice versa. I think what's important is the trust in the mechanism for assigning a status to the piece of knowledge, including whether it's contested or accepted or, minority, marginal or unknown. I think these are the kind of four quadrants. Of course, it's a continuum square, but how many people believe it, how many people disbelieve it, and so you have unknown, majority believe, majority disbelieve, and then the opposite of that is, or an alternative to that will be marginal or contested, where a lot of people both believe and disbelieve. Call that social truth, personally. But it's not about the knowledge being trusted. It's about the process of arbitration being trusted. And even, of course, the process of arbitration may be debated. There's always a meta, but that's still. I just try to be careful with the notion of trusted knowledge.
That's interesting, Marc-Antoine, because when I was doing this and I was checking it from a few different angles, and one of the things that came up for me was about whether trustworthy or trustworthiness is the right term to use. So I was struggling for something better in there, but I think that's I understand what you're saying there, and yeah, thank you. Any other comments? Yeah.
Yeah, if I can jump in. I think we can work around that question partly by saying trusted by whom and letting that be a variable. Meaning, a scientific method will be trusted by people who trust science, et cetera, et cetera. The young Earth thesis is trusted by people who are highly religious and believe that the Earth is only 5,000, 6,000 years old. And that is maybe the same degree of trust. It's just trust in two completely different worldviews. And that's okay, because we actually want those multiple worldviews to be representable within the NeoBooks sphere environment, like world. That's totally fine. And I wish Jose were on this call, because he also has sort of a vision like Marc-Antoine's of, it's turtles all the way down, but we need to identify the turtles. And we need to say, oh, this is a foundational belief to this, which is a foundational belief to this, which is a foundational belief to this. Therefore, this assertion rests on these foundations, and we can say that it comes from this belief system, let's say, right? And the belief systems are all legitimate in the sense that humans believe in them. And L. Ron Hubbard in Scientology has a belief system that there are reptile people that I don't remember the details of it, but there are people who believe it. So it's a belief system. And there's a whole bunch of other even wackier ones out there that populations believe in. Then the only way we can have a rich and nutritive and interesting sort of civic conversational thinking space is by allowing these things to materialize and represent themselves in the space in a way that they feel is accurate, but in a way that is open to critiques and framings from other groups. Because if I'm unwilling to say, I believe in a lizard god who put us all on Earth for, in order to harvest avocados, and you say, no, that's nonsense, and I won't let you do that, then I'm out of the conversation. I've just decided, nope, I'm taking my ball and going home. Anyway, Marc-Antoine.
Yes, and I totally, like, this is kind of the postmodern view, right? There's all these beliefs, and we have to represent them. There's no question about that. Exclusion is not the best way, though. Sometimes I hesitate about hate speech and the yada yada yada. So that's the other aspect, right? But let's not get there. What is important to me is, it's kind of on the other hand, the Popperian view. There's no proof, but there's this proof. It's like, and this proof, of course, is within the scientific paradigm. But the notion that saying, here is counter evidence for this, and what do you why would you accept or dismiss a certain type of evidence? Why do you accept or dismiss a certain type of can we, like often I think it's interesting to me. I don't know how useful it is, but I think it's important to be able to say what are the criteria that make you believe this instead of this? What are what's the meta epistemic criterion you use? And then see if we can play with that criterion. So it's not just abstract, acceptable to whom, it's acceptable according to what principles, which is a bit more subtle, because then we can discuss the principles. That's what I'm trying to say.
Cool.
It's not, yeah.
Thank you. And anybody else with comments? Otherwise, back to Jax in the booth.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. This is already helpful. On to the next little bit. So this is sort of more, I suppose, a bit more tactical, which is around, what's next. And probably a misnomer here is that I also thought about what the movement of the group and the looking at taking that 5-week view, where we were 5 weeks ago to where we were now, and how that knowledge or how our progress, for the want of a better word, has sort of moved and shaped over that time. And I noted that around the beginning of sort of end of February, end of December, beginning of January, that there was a sort of sense of we used the word, we didn't feel it was quite right, but a sort of sense of frustration because we're sort of pulling apart a bit as a group in lots of different perspectives that came through. And over the last 5 weeks, we've really worked on that, I believe, as a group and sort of come together to the point that it's moved a bit further forward, especially with some of the model discussions that we've had and some of the identification of process as well as, and the practical as well as the theoretical. And looking at the presentation from last week, that's really sort of, you can see that we're sort of starting to land something that has more agreement on, that we can see that we're starting to think along some same things, and we can identify what the differences are. On that foundation, it would be really good to keep moving with that and to keep that kind of sense of collective shaping happening, which I think is probably going to happen because of the nature of the group anyway. But I came up with some things that might help us keep the momentum going, but also that has come out of our discussions. So there's 6 things. I'll just go through them fairly briefly. The first one is around a prototype. We're often in a theoretical space and quite comfortable working at a theoretical level. It would be really useful to have some kind of artifact that we're working on to test. That would help also for any newcomers that come into the group who are still may not have access to that theoretical discourse just yet, but they can see what the prototype is. And that would also allow that sort of sense of some sense making to happen. The second one is around using the Kinefin framework a little bit more, especially as a sense of being able to map and move where we are at, and sort of think, are we in the chaotic zone? Are we moving over into the complex or into the complicated? And I suspect that that's quite dynamic within this group. I also know that there's it may not be the best frame or the perfect one. There's problem with the model as well, but that's come up in conversation a couple of times over the last month. The double loop learning, I think, and I'm not familiar enough with this, so I've put a lot of information here, and you'll know it better than I do, but that we use that process a little bit more to keep track of the nature of the discussion that we're having, and even and be able to signpost it so that when we're here, we know we're having that kind of discussion, or we're having this kind of discussion. I've put some suggestions up there with what they might be. They might not be right. Yeah, is that yes or not so much, Marc-Antoine?
No, that's
That's yes. Yeah, cool. I'm not familiar with the tools very much, but I know that Marc-Antoine's conversation yesterday is about AnyPod, and which I think is, and I'm not sure what in terms of if that's the potential tool, and also for Whitewind as a publishing or blogging kind of process. So I'm a little bit unsure about what needs to happen in terms of the tool. So for me, it's putting in, that making that tool choice consciously, and maybe with some kind of concrete demonstrations or something, so that we can kind of see, might be helpful. The last two are number 5 is about making the most of the momentum, which is just brilliant. I think you can really feel that change over the last 5 weeks, moving towards that sense of some concrete actions. I've listed what I thought, some of them that I've been able to identify, what I think that they are, but there's probably more here, which means we've got a to-do list of some sort, and these may or may not be the right ones, but having some kind of practical to-do list might help us kind of keep going. Where are we at? Yeah, thanks, Jerry. And the last one is around storytelling for newcomers, and a little bit, I touched on this before, but that sort of need to think about how we bring new participants in without isolating or alienating. Not that this is more a problem. I think it's more of a challenge, and it is around that flowing of diverse people coming through the group over time, and being able to find ways that they can access the story. So I know that we've got the Mattermost work, as well as the recordings that we do of this and the transcripts. And I think some of our conversation around the tools is around how people might access what's happening through here. I wondered if we could play a little bit with something like Notebook LM, for example, if there's some documentation that can be fed into there. But maybe we've had discussions about that, not sure. But thinking about just how people can access it would be really useful. For someone like me, who 6 months ago came in and was on a learning curve. I posed a few other questions. The last one there, I won't go through all of them now. I think they're sorts of questions that do come up. But the last one there is the really, for me, the sort of provocative one. If we started fresh tomorrow and went away and came back and we forgot everything that we knew about this, like our NEC touch phone, Jerry, what would we do if we needed to start afresh today? And is there something there in that might uncover some other way that we can think about what we're doing? We don't have to answer it, but that's my sort of finishing question. And I've got a whole heap of the appendix here are around the summaries of our last 5 meetings. So you're welcome to go through those, check that they're correct. And I've put the Kinefin framework down just for easy reference. There we are. Thank you very much.
We are going to sorely miss you when you disappear into your cybernetic future.
Yes, we will.
Oh my goodness. Lots and lots of thoughts and comments. Whoever wants to start. But just thank you for doing this. This was really clarifying and lovely to look at.
I'm personally curious. I personally don't see how to use Cinefin, and I'm familiar with Cinefin in this framework, because Cinefin is more about interacting with the world, and here we're building. I may be wrong. So yeah, I've never used Cinefin as a tool for building, so I'm curious.
Marc-Antoine, if I might just illuminate my thinking there a little bit, and it might be off because I'm a bit of a rogue in this area. I was thinking about it in terms of our group dynamic, and which is also the building of it, but how we were going from a chaotic or sometimes with
as a group
various
dynamic, I get it.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful. Yeah, we don't have a plan of action yet, but we're certainly less chaotic than we were. Yes, that is a fact.
Well, several calls back, Jose in particular said, "Hey, we either sort of do something about this, or I can't be part of this anymore because I want to get something done," which was a really nice call to action. And then you all putting in this degree of effort is moving us forward a lot. A couple tiny things. One, I think it's pronounced Cynefin,
Okay,
as I
Evan.
put in the chat. So it looks like Cynefin, but it's Cynefin because it's a Welsh word, and Welsh words don't look anything like they're spelled.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
I've heard Cynefin directly from Snowden's mouth several times.
Yeah,
Relatively sure in the
Me too.
pronunciation.
It's
Me
definitely
too.
Cynefin. It's the way my brain does this funny little connection, but I know it's Cynefin. It just when I'm thinking, I tend to disconnect for some reason, and yes,
Plug
but
that
yes,
part back in
Cynefin.
quick.
I know, but
Don't
thank
let
you for
that part
picking me up
drift
on that.
off into space.
Yeah.
And then I put nuggetization in the chat partly because, and this is the piece I need to write in, but I think that nuggets are sort of in some form or other semi-central to NeoBooks. At least they're central to me, because I think that the idea of a composable, reusable, living nugget is very much at the middle of how do we let ideas be more of what they should be in the world? How do we like turbocharge them so that we can assemble ideas, remix ideas, hybridize ideas, and come up with new things that lead us to new arguments, new regulations, new proposals, new whatevers, all of that, which are remixes of these composable ideas, right? And so a piece that I was just thinking, gosh, I bet it's possible to teach Notebook LM how to nuggetize. I'm willing to bet that if we fed a couple of documents, including maybe some of our call transcripts or call notes, into Notebook LM, and then said, here's what a nugget should be. Please turn out like 20 nuggets that represent the core of these conversations or these arguments. I'm willing to bet we'd get something pretty interesting out the other end. Now, when I write NeoBooks, I'm trying to write in nuggets. I'm always I'm nuggetizing as I think. So when I write kind of a post that I think contains another post, I will try to split out the other post and then include it by reference into the bigger post, so that the littler nugget is actually its own freestanding nugget that got sucked in like mitochondria into a human cell, sucked in to power some other argument. And I like that. That makes me very happy when I find those moments where I can do that. I don't have enough functional prose strung together in nugget form to make and transclusion is exactly what it is, Eric. In fact, I'm using Obsidian's bang mark transclusion function to do that. You just put an exclamation point in front of the internal link in Obsidian, and that does the transclusion for you in a relatively nifty, straightforward way. But I think we need, I really like let's start somewhere small and start with an experiment. I think maybe our next call could be framing that experiment better. And I'm afraid there were 2 or 3 calls that Jose wasn't going to be able to attend. I think he thought he was going to be able to make this one. This may not have been one of the ones he can make. So let's ping with him on Mattermost in case we need to shift the next couple weeks calls, so that he can participate. But I really like the idea of let's find a starting point for some exercise, and let's just define that starting point. What will make us happy when we're done with? What does it look like when we're sort of done with it? And then we can even use a couple calls to practically co-work on it and do it. You all have been really kind to spend time on this outside of the calls, but there's no reason we can't actually co-work on the calls and try to achieve some of this together. That seems like a doable thing. So I'm excited for all the things that you've put on the table for us. The double and triple loop learning is something we're not doing very much of. We're not kind of looking at ourselves and trying to improve how we do what we do. I think that's important as well. I think we need to step up a bit in that and this is I'm extremely guilty of this because I love salon conversations and learning a lot from all of you. We're really good at sort of drifting around in conversations that are kind of satisfying in a, oh, I didn't know that kind of sense. We're not the best at, oh, okay, we got 4 things done on our checklist today. That was really satisfying. So I would love to be more of a checklist satisfying completion kind of guy. So Marc-Antoine.
I think there's more to double loop learning, and I especially like the way that Jax put it down than checking marks. Not that checking marks is not important.
Oh, I
Tasks are
wasn't
good.
equating those 2 things.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. But I think it's more about did we progress on those tasks, but did progressing on our tasks lead us closer to our higher level goals? And revising that at regular intervals, and are we choosing the right tasks for our
Yep.
higher level goals? And I think that's really important. One thing I've tried, sorry, this is going to be a parenthesis, but in my own day, I've started making it a point when I do plan tasks, it's like, okay, what are going to be my personal points of psychological resistance to those tasks? That's another way I'm going meta. That's my practice that I've started recently. Very interesting.
Cool. Other thoughts, comments?
Jerry, I might just add on that your last comment. Then I've added into this document that having an observer each week might help that. So just nominating that one person, maybe it's Jack this week is the observer, and you still take part in it, but that's part of your role is to kind of how has this gone? And then to be able to feed that back in. And none of this, as we all know, none of it has to be perfect. They're just little iterations where we learn as we go. But that would share that around and also give somebody a position of actually having that zoom out role, which might help address, are we answering the right questions? Did we actually get that one achieved? Have we moved further in the right direction or in another direction?
So just to paraphrase what you're saying, Jax, the observer's role would be to listen in and participate in each call, but then at the end of that call, and this would be a rotating position, at the end of the call where they're the observer, to report in on how did we do relative to our thoughts or plans about this call, what worked, what didn't work, things like that.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
I like it. Eric?
Yes. So first, I want us to recognize the work, which I call data butlering, that Jax put into this. That term comes from Lauren, who did this for PKE, which is a group, an offshoot from years ago. So there is an archival record of content of calls and major topics. And we actually used otter.ai back then, so the transcripts are out there, still out there. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is Samhan has something called a CCC, which is a communication and commitment to collaborate. And it is just a one-way proposal to another person about what you're trying to do and what you think you can offer to the collaboration. Like what it's really, you're going through the thought process of your commitment to doing a collaboration, and then the other person can send one back to you. And I think that there are certain exercises that may help the group become more cohesive going towards a goal. Another thing is Stuart, his books about coming to agreement. I bought his books and I'm starting to look at them, and I'm just fascinated by where he came from there. Stuart Levine.
Yeah, thank you. We should find some examples of the CCC in practice so that we know a little bit about how to use them.
I like the idea of data butlering.
Okay, let's go back to brass tacks. Like I wish Jose were there. He has his agenda on Git, and I think he's a Git Markdown person, very much. As you know, I'm reticent to use Markdown because I think it's easier to do web annotation on HTML than Markdown directly, especially when you're generating the HTML from the Markdown. But that's just me. And I do want to use web annotation. It's something I want to show. I think my job, I mean, let's face it, I'm more interested in the next layer. And my job would be to start showing what would a nugget, a structured information nugget look like? More at, well, data level and UX level. Those are not things I'll do fast. Because the part of what I understand of NeoBook is doable with very little intervention, right? In the sense, you have Obsidian, where you do transclusion. You put Obsidian in Git. It works well enough. You don't get fully the provenance. We've discussed it many times. If we're looking at existing tools, I mean, I'm using AnyType. I'm happy with it, but AnyType, the free version's limited, so I've started hosting my own, and getting you all to use my own hosted AnyType is a slight hurdle, not undoable, just a slight hurdle. I got Jack in, I got a few people in. I do invite you to come in because it's as good an environment as any. It's not, on the other hand, it means we get obscure JavaScript format or Markdown and translatable to Markdown, but yeah. Markdown, on the other hand, is, as Jerry likes to say, usable by muggles, and that's a plus. But the problem is when you're looking at the Markdown file, if you have a reference to a transcluded idea, you don't see the transclusion, you just see the link, right? So you need the tool to view, like Obsidian, to view the execution of the transclusion, which is fine. I mean, it's a thing. Up to a point, what do you need? How far are you from that goal of doing a NeoBook-ish thing that way? That's the first question. I'm very far from the kind of tool where I can get NeoBook-ish plus structured conversation. But it's definitely something I should try again. Here's what a data format could be, and here's how the visualization could look like. That's work I will do at some point, not soon, because now I'm getting contracts, which I'm getting paid for. Yay.
Yay.
But on the other hand, it does mean it will slow down my contribution to the NeoBooks effort. So I think among my list, because I think my list is a superset of Jose, and this is still something to check. I want Jose to check in on that. Did I miss anything? We can easily circumscribe. This is what is accomplished by the current Obsidian Markdown thing. What cannot be done with it, or not easily, and what are the priorities for the next step? What is the more you'd like to see? And that's a question to you all. What are the pieces of functionality that you don't have yet that you'd want, and how to make it happen? Weaving Obsidian pieces into a continuous story, I'm very much reminded of, I'm sure it can be done with Pandoc or something. It's,
Well, that was kind of the goal, was that in order to squeeze out a book from nuggets, an app like Pandoc was going to assemble them and then push it out as one long document.
which shouldn't be hard. Just a little weave script could take all the nuggets, and then you get one humongous markdown with all the pieces, which should be writable in, frankly, under an hour. And then, yeah, you have a workflow.
Stacey.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a very simple answer to this, but
42.
I don't even know, when you say a structured information nugget, I have no clue what you're talking about. And it reminded me of the last call when we were talking about reading maps. And I was like, well, yeah, it was easy to read a map because there was a key and I could look at the key and see what everything meant. But coming into a call like this is so hard because I have no frigging clue what a structured information nugget is. And I can't be the only one.
Valid, valid. But anyway, it's what I've been speaking about for since you've known me, pretty much.
And I know that. So when I know what it is, I can apply it.
That must be extra frustrating.
Yeah. It's the frames. So the idea is you have a structure saying, here's the piece of information, but the piece of information is really a schema, and it's like a play. In a play, you have actors playing roles, and that's the topic mapping metaphor. So if I say John gives a ball to Mary, we have the actors John and Mary and the ball, right? These are the actors in the schema of giving. Giving is the play. So structured information schema is, instead of using the sentence, John gives a ball to Mary, we have, this is a giving action in which the actors are John, the ball, and Mary. And it means John and ball and Mary are other nuggets, and I can look at which other nuggets, which other scenes are John, Mary, and the ball playing in. So entity recognition, relation, but I'm less interested in relation as in triples, like just one-to-one, John and Mary, but it's whole scenes with many actors. And
so it's sort of like whatever's in the bucket.
Yeah.
In a way.
And one thing I think is really important is frames are often nested. Like if John is selling the ball to Mary, that's a different action, but you can also decompose it as John gives a ball to Mary and Mary gives money to John. So the giving frames are subframes, implicit subframes of the selling frame. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And the selling or the giving frame could be part of suppose it's not a ball but a car. John gave a car to Mary. Oh, and Mary works in this agency, and so this may be a bribery account. So that's a bribery frame. And then you get into moral frames. Why is that bad? And then you get.
But my quick question: what constraints does the word structured put on it? Like when you use the word structured, how does that separate it from being something else?
Yes. A structure has components and composed, and it's nested in, I spoke of nesting in one sense, the composition of frames, but it's nested in that Mary is an entity independent. Giving is an entity that's independent. Giving can be part of another entity, which is the selling, as I said. So each thing is each act or entity or concept, idea. Selling is an idea also, right? I spoke of a corruption frame. Corruption is an idea, and it's put in the moral framework. And those are all ideas. We're able to talk about them. They're topics in topic mapping terms. And we can have an index of when did corruption happen? Or when did giving could be corruption? You know, all these cases. We can ask, it's a database, it's a structured database of data, and we can ask questions of it. And that's the advantage. And when we're doing reuse, we want to know that that part we're pulling in, transcluding, it actually has all these connections. We're just pulling one expression of it because we can't pull all the connections all the time. But when we transclude, this thing stays connected so that this thing that we've transcluded, it still has all these other connections you can go back to. Oh, and by the way, it was part of this, it was part of this, it's connected to that also. And that's what I'm seeing as the database vision, the queryable database vision, instead of the text cloud. It's not just a cloud of connected text bits, but it's cloud of connected data structures, which again, you can compute with as well. And the other contention, we speak often about what we can do with the nuggets. It was said in another way that was wonderful, I forgot it, but for me, I call it compare and compose. If two people are saying seemingly the same thing, is it really the same thing? Is it just looking like it? It's easier to do these fine comparisons with named entities than with text. And same with composition. If you want to say, oh, this is part of that, well, if what you have is text, it's assembly can be, oh, is it connected this way or that way? It's a bit ambiguous because it's like a natural language. Whereas the idea of structures is they're a bit more rigorous. So it's more like Lego bricks, and this can connect to this, but this cannot connect to that.
Thank you.
Jax, then me, and I have a hard stop at the top of the hour, but I'm happy to pass the con and let this conversation go further until you guys want to close it down. But I have to switch at the top of the hour. Jax.
Thanks. Yeah, and I have to jump out just beforehand at the hour too. I still with my observer hat on, I would just like to take a moment to recognise that conversation there between Stacey and Marc-Antoine for all of us, of course, because that is the example of storytelling that we need to build on so that we're working closely together. And it's worthwhile as we go forward, thinking about when we have that moment of, and Stacey, I'm not even asking if that helped for you, but I'm taking it for my own personal knowledge building here. There is a moment, there's about 2 minutes long in this video, that is a really good place to copy, reproduce, or put up in a form that says, here is Marc-Antoine talking through a version of what we're talking about with structured knowledge. And that is in itself, we've just produced a piece of knowledge that then we can use at another point, come from another direction, and someone else can have a different view of it. But we've got a building block at the center of it. It might not be what we're talking about in terms of nuggets or anything else.
Not all nuggets are structured knowledge, so I totally agree.
No.
It's also a nugget.
Exactly, but it's in that storytelling, and Marc-Antoine, I really, I absolutely adore, and I'm in awe of your ability to, I'll put this in I think I'll put this in our chat too, to construct, and your intellect in this area is really great, which is wonderful. And when you ground it with these, it probably feels sometimes a little bit sort of simplistic, but it's really, it's a little thread that takes someone like me, very quickly into where your head is at, and it starts to make sense. So it's really wonderful when you have those moments of illumination. I wanted to pick up too on your comment about it's not fast work. This is slow work. And this project is by its nature, is a slowly evolving project. And if it's successful, we'll go on well beyond all of us, right? Unless we all live decades, centuries old. It doesn't mean that we need to get bogged down in the slowness. We can work lightly, simply across the top of that and test and try and then keep record.
I agree totally. There's some things worthwhile that will not include. I don't know if if structured knowledge is in José's scope, and that's fine. I'm perfectly happy with that. I do hope that he'll build things in a way that it's easy for me to plug that in at some point. And for me, I would like markup rather than markdown, like markup like HTML rather than markdown, but that's not vital. We'll manage. It's all interconvertible. But I have the building block of web annotation that I can apply to HTML and not directly to markdown, only indirectly after conversion. That's my...
Back to you, Jax.
What?
Back to you, Jax. You kind of jumped in on here.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I just wonder if that's a constraint that needs to be thought through at some stage. If we can look at it from another angle, and just to throw something in there, especially thinking about that multimodal. At the beginning of our 5-6 weeks, Wendy was here and she put up the sort of the sensual part, and so Stacey, I haven't put this in there, but you also brought up the social element of this as well, which is sometimes a tactile experience or a sensory experience, which I'm not sure how we'll capture in a digital format. So there are no solutions for that, but I think that might be a constraint that we may need to negotiate at some stage.
Thank you. A couple quick comments. Stacy, maybe this will help for structured versus semi-structured, et cetera. When you look at your bank checking account on the web, and it says check number 403 on this date for this amount, and this was the payee, that's highly structured data. That is structured data. Unstructured data is the transcript of this call with no processing done to it. And semi-structured data lies somewhere in between. It's like, we had a call on this date at this time. Here's the whole transcript, and here are nuggets out of the transcript. That could be semi-structured data. And then you can do a whole mess of things with any of them. But different databases are good at different types of data, right? So relational databases are really good at highly structured data, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Oh gosh, I had like 5 thoughts and they've all flown from my head. So I think finding our way to a simple prototype that will illustrate what we're talking about is a good way to move forward. I'm interested in, so the thing that I would like to set up as an example is assume good intent. It's what I think of as a nugget. Assume good intent is a key principle of open source software, of Wikipedia, of the thing I call design from trust. It is explainable quite briefly. There is no single canonical explanation, so there could be many variants of it and neighbors. You could also, instead of saying it's assume good intent, I've also heard it called assume good faith. I don't think that those things are very different. But once you can set up a nugget like that and then show how it can be used and reused in different contexts, show how you can apply frames to it, and show how it can become a conversational element, I think that'll work out. And I just remembered one of the other things I wanted to say. Many months ago, maybe even a year ago here in NeoBooks, Pete and I tried to sort of take the group through what would the conversation technologies look like, given that we were writing in Obsidian markdown files and pushing them to GitHub. What alternatives does that give us for creating conversations around our little nuggets of information? And that conversation sort of went nowhere. It was like pushing a spaghetti up the wall. Nobody in the call was particularly interested, even though Pete and I were very interested in it and kind of disagree a bit on what the mechanisms should be. But for example, GitHub has a mechanism called fork and pull. If you post something on GitHub, you would then get pull requests from other people who have copied your body of work over to their own workspace, made changes to it, and then sent you a request to add these changes to the main line of the body of that work. That's a conversational technology. It's a little bit complicated and geeky because it works really well for writing code together. I'm not so sure. It also happens to work well for writing prose together, but it's not as simple as 5 people looking at a Google Doc and just making changes to it live as they look at it. That's really dirt simple kind of conversational technology. The problem with many people making changes to a Google Doc is that you lose track of who made what change, what goes where, what's going on, and the document can get really chaotic really quickly. So we were looking for many different ways of creating conversations. A small side note, there's a thing called White Wind, which is kind of a blogging tool, but it's a blogging tool that obeys the @proto, this new protocol that Blue Sky uses. Blue Sky is the Twitter emulator competitor newbie that is picking up a lot of attention finally now. The reason I raise it is that you can make a web blog post in White Wind. When you post about it to Blue Sky, all the comments made on Blue Sky that become like a natural thread on this Twitter-like Blue Sky thing wind up showing up automatically under your post in White Wind. It's a blog post that has a built-in conversational technology because it obeys and plays nicely with this protocol called the @proto. I just did the balloon thing. So that's an example of adding conversations, and some of what we're really missing a lot is technology that allows us to converse over these nuggets, to be social, to be interactive, to riff on them, to copy them out. And we've tried to go there, but it's been a little bouncy. And I apologize. We've reached the top of our call. I'm happy to pass the con, but I know a couple of us have to bounce from the call.
Are we not going to see Jax again?
Jax,
gonna-
what-
Not
I'm going to
what's the
try
regularly.
and I'm going to try and come next week. And Stacey, I'll explain to you, but I'm moving into another program. I'll drop back when I can.
No, I understand. I'm glad that you'll be dropping in sometimes.
and
I
some,
like having you here.
yeah, same here. And some days when you're just like sick and tired of cybernetics and all that kind of stuff, just come join these conversations.
Thank you so much. It's been
You're
such a
always
pleasure.
welcome. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Until next week then. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
À bientôt.